They came to watch out of arrogance, not curiosity. The delegation of the Orion Vanguard, an elite collection of the galaxy's most powerful species, descended on the Terran system expecting spectacle. They had heard whispers that humanity, though new to the Galactic Accord, trained differently. Brutally, some said. Recklessly, others claimed. But to the oldest warriors in the stars, these were myths. They had seen empires rise and burn before. No primitive species could surprise them. The observation chamber floated in low orbit over the Terran moon. Below, on a dusty plateau carved into the rock, thousands of human soldiers stood in perfect formation. No music, no ceremony, just the sound of the wind and the low growl of machinery. The Orion warlords watched through reinforced glass. Even with their enhanced senses, they could barely comprehend what they were seeing. The humans weren't training with weapons. They were training their bodies. A single voice barked from below, magnified through the comms. Again, 10,000 soldiers dropped, rose, and dropped again in synchronized motion. Sweat glistened, breath turned to mist, but not a single one faltered. Again, the alien observers shifted uneasily. Commander Rethok, a scaled veteran of 1,000 battles, scoffed quietly. Pointless. They exhaust themselves before combat. What kind of strategy is this? Next to him, an Avatar tactician tilted her head, her translucent eyes narrowing. It's not exhaustion, she whispered. It's conditioning. The word tasted strange in her mouth. She had studied every known military species. None trained like this. Most relied on augmentation, symbiotic implants, or genetic precision. Yet here were these soft, fragile bipeds, breaking themselves down by choice. Hours passed. The humans continued. The sun dipped below the lunar ridge, and floodlights activated automatically. They did not stop. No orders came. No incentives. They simply kept going. Finally, one of the alien generals leaned forward. Are they competing? No. The Avatar replied quietly. They're together. Down below, one soldier stumbled. His arms gave out, collapsing beneath him. Instantly, two others flanked him, dragging him back into formation, helping him rise again. No punishment. No shame. Just silent unity. For the first time, the Orion Vanguard felt a flicker of unease. It wasn't their strength that disturbed them. It was their purpose. These weren't soldiers. These were believers. Hours stretched into a full cycle. By the time dawn rose again, the plateau was soaked with sweat and frost. The humans stood at attention, trembling with fatigue, yet every pair of eyes burned with the same cold fire. Then the commander stepped forward. His uniform was plain. No ornaments, no rank insignia. Just the word instructor stitched across the chest. He looked over his troops, his voice steady, carrying across the comms. You break. You rebuild. You break again. Until breaking doesn't mean ending. He turned to the observer's window, almost as if he knew they were being watched. And that's why we win. The room went silent. Even the machines stopped humming for a moment. Commander Rethok felt something unfamiliar in his throat, an emotion he hadn't felt in centuries. Fear. Because what he saw below wasn't strength. It was obsession, a refusal to yield. He'd fought armies that boasted perfection. But this was something worse. It was imperfection weaponized. And somewhere, deep down, he understood, this was just training. They hadn't even started fighting yet. The Galactic Council of Warfare gathered in orbit above Mars 2 standard cycles later. The chamber was vast, silver and cold, built to make even gods feel small. Around its crescent table sat representatives of 15 species, each a veteran of countless campaigns. The humans were not invited. The topic was simple. The conclusion was not. Humans display a form of discipline incompatible with logic, said the Avatar tactician, her voice rippling through the translator field. They harm themselves to grow stronger. They exhaust themselves to find calm. They operate on pain and unity as if those are nutrients. A low rumble of disapproval moved through the chamber. Exaggeration, muttered the reptilian General Rethok. Primitive endurance rituals. They will adapt to modern warfare or die trying. But a softer voice cut through the noise. Admiral Shinar of the Alithians, her body a living mist of light, leaned forward. You did not see what I saw, she said quietly. I observed one of their training domes. They call it a simulation, but it is not just a test. It is, she paused, searching for a word in a dozen languages, a crucible. The others turned toward her. I watched them enter with smiles, she continued. I watched them die inside that machine, again and again. Their own program kills them, breaks their minds, resets them, and they step back in willingly. There is no hesitation. No hesitation. Her light dimmed as she whispered. I have fought species who sought death, but never one that practiced it. The room fell silent. Then, from the shadows at the back, a new voice spoke. Cold, calm, almost amused. Their secret isn't bravery. All eyes turned to the being who had just arrived, an envoy from the Dominion Intelligence Directorate. Thin, cloaked, unreadable. It's not courage that drives them, the envoy said. It's the understanding that fear is permanent, and they train with it until it obeys. A shiver passed through the assembly. Rethok bared his fangs. Meaning what exactly? The envoy's gaze swept the chamber. Meaning that if they ever decide you are the enemy, you won't even have time to surrender. The council erupted in protest. Voices clashed in every frequency, arguments echoing like thunder. Some demanded preemptive containment of human military power. Others called for alliance. A few, just a few, suggested studying them quietly. The vote never finished. Because at that moment, the lights dimmed. A transmission cut through every secure channel in the room. It was human. No encryption. No warning. The screen flickered to life. Grainy footage of a Terran training hall. 1,000 soldiers in black armor stood motionless in silence. Then a voice, steady, cold, unmistakably human, spoke. We know you're watching. Every delegate froze. Don't mistake our drills for peace. The voice continued. This is preparation. Because someday, someone will test us again. And when they do, the image zoomed out, showing not soldiers, but orbital carriers, entire fleets under construction above Earth. We won't start the fight, but we will finish it. The feed ended. In the silence that followed, Admiral Shinar whispered, they wanted us to see. And deep within the chamber, unseen by any, the envoy from Dominion Intelligence smiled faintly. Because in that single moment, every warrior in the galaxy realized the same truth. Humans didn't need war to be dangerous. Their training was already a declaration of it. The infiltration began with arrogance. Cadet Varix of the Kidhar Dominion, young, brilliant, and far too confident, was selected for what they called Operation Glass Vael. His mission was to pose as an exchange observer and study humanity's military practices from within. The Dominion believed they were infiltrating primitive martial culture. Varix believed he was studying barbarians. Both were wrong. He arrived on Earth under the gray skies of a training complex known as Atlas Base. Nestled in the Andes, it was a fortress carved into the mountain itself, a place where the air was thin and mercy thinner. Humans welcomed him politely. Smiles. Handshakes. Casual jokes that his translator struggled to parse. He was assigned to observe Group Delta 7, a unit in the middle of what they called Hell Week. He assumed it was a metaphor. It was not. The first day broke him. He watched in disbelief as humans ran through freezing rivers at dawn, their bodies trembling, voices steady as they shouted cadences in unison. By mid-morning, one man collapsed, hypothermia. They revived him. He stood. He ran again. Varix logged every detail. His notes grew frantic. They refused to stop. Not from exhaustion, not from pain. They laugh in the face of collapse. There is something unquantifiable here. By nightfall, he stopped writing. He was too busy trying not to vomit as he watched them crawl through mud under live fire, smiling. On the second day, his handler in orbit contacted him. Report, Cadet. What have you learned about human resilience? Varix hesitated. Resilience is not the right word, he said softly. It's defiance. What do you mean? He looked out across the field where men and women dragged each other through exhaustion, one refusing to leave the other behind. They don't train to win. They train to not die alone. There was silence on the line. Then static. The Dominion signal cut out. He realized with a chill that no human had given him permission to transmit. That night, the instructors called for volunteers. A new course. A new endurance trial. Varix, eager to prove himself, raised his hand. The humans grinned. They took him to a simulation chamber deep underground. No weapons. No armor. Just a black room and a heartbeat that wasn't his own. The lights flickered. The air grew thick. A voice echoed from the dark. Rule 1. You do not quit. Rule 2. You do not quit. Rule 3. He finished it aloud, breath shaking. You do not quit. Hours, or days, passed. The simulation shifted from environments to hallucinations. Fire, ice, vacuum, isolation, voices of loved ones. The sound of his own mind breaking. And yet, through the distortion, he could hear them. Humans in the other pods, still chanting, still breathing, still alive. When the simulation finally ended, Varix stumbled out, body trembling, eyes wide with something like worship. The lead instructor, a scarred woman named Major Hale, regarded him coolly. You did better than most outsiders. He swallowed hard. That was not a drill. She tilted her head. No, that was remembering what it means to be human. He looked at her, horrified. But you're not supposed to feel fear like that. You broke us apart in there. She smiled faintly. Exactly. So we can learn to rebuild before someone else tries to do it for us. Later, when he sent his final classified report, Varix didn't use Dominion encryption. He didn't send it at all. He deleted it, sat in silence, and watched as the next group of recruits entered the chamber without hesitation. He understood now why the galaxy feared them. Humans weren't training for war. They were training to become something war itself couldn't break. Word of humanity's training reached the stars like a contagion. Across the void, recordings of Earth's drills, grainy footage leaked by Varix before his silence, spread through every channel of the Galactic Council. No one wanted to believe it. No one could look away. The footage showed soldiers carrying each other through blizzards, Marines crawling under barbed wire with bloodied hands, pilots holding their breath for 6 minutes straight under G-forces that would liquefy alien organs. But it was the laughter that disturbed them most. Because no one laughs like that in pain. The council convened in a vast orbital citadel above Telvar Prime. 12 species attended. Each claimed to represent the peak of evolution in their respective arts of war. The Thrawn for endurance. The Zalari for precision. The Krith for mental discipline. The Vael for tactical instinct. And at the center sat the Archon of Arms, a being older than most of the council itself, her voice cold as starlight. Humanity trains as if war is inevitable. They prepare for extinction. We will study this behavior. Perhaps replicate it. Replicate it. That was the mistake. A program was drafted, Project Ascendant. 10 warriors from 10 empires, each to undergo Earth's standard human adaptive regimen. 100 days, 0 augmentation, no mercy. Earth agreed, eagerly. They welcomed the alien champions with smiles and salutes. The humans didn't boast. They didn't mock. They simply handed them boots, gear, and a single warning. No one finishes alone. From the first hour, the aliens realized something was wrong. The air burned their lungs. The gravity bit into their joints. The food was dense, heavy, foul with protein they couldn't digest. But worse than the physical torment was the pace. Humans trained before dawn and long past dusk. Sleep was a rumor. On day 3, the Thrawn collapsed mid-run. A human sergeant carried him, literally, through 5 more miles without complaint. On day 6, the Zalari marksman threw down his rifle, screaming about futility. A human private handed it back, reassembled it, and said, "Do it again." On day 10, 3 aliens tried to quit. The instructors didn't stop them. They simply pointed to the gate. "You can leave," the commander said. "But if you do, the others will have to carry your gear for the rest of the course." The aliens froze. Their comrades, exhausted, bleeding, stared at them silently. Not with anger. Not with contempt. Just disappointment. None of them left. By the 20th day, they began to understand something fundamental about human strength. It wasn't in the muscle or bone or heart. It was between them. They bled together. Failed together. Rose together. One night, during a storm that tore across the mountain range, a Krith mentalist turned to his human partner and whispered, "You train like this every year?" The soldier smiled through rain and blood. "Every day." The Krith shook his head. "But why? There is no war." The human looked at him for a long time before answering. "There's always a war. Sometimes it's just inside you." By the end of the program, only 4 of the 10 alien warriors remained. None had graduated by human standards, but they had changed. Their bodies were broken, but their minds, something inside, had been reforged. When they returned home, their governments didn't know what to do with them. The survivors spoke softly, reverently, of Earth, of people who made hell their classroom. And in the halls of the Galactic Council, the Archon of Arms convened another secret meeting. Her expression was unreadable as she replayed the footage of the humans training in storms, laughing like madmen. "They do not possess discipline," she murmured. "They possess something far more dangerous, will without boundary." Then, quietly, she gave an order. "Send the fleets to Earth. We need to know what they become when the training ends." The fleet came in silence. 500 warships from across the Council's species, converging above Earth's orbit under a flag of observation, not aggression, or so they claimed. But no one sends dreadnoughts to observe. From orbit, the planet looked deceptively calm. Blue and green, swirled with white. Peaceful. Fragile. A world that shouldn't have been capable of defying galactic empires. On the surface, in the frozen wastes of what humans called Siberia, something stirred. It wasn't a battle. It was a drill. And yet, no one watching could tell the difference. Thousands of armored humans moved like one living organism, mechanized divisions flowing across snowfields with perfect synchronization. Dropships cut through the clouds, releasing paratroopers into hurricanes of ice. Railgun artillery thundered in disciplined rhythm, each strike timed to the heartbeat of an entire army. The aliens watched from their ships, their sensors screaming. The energy signatures were off the charts. These weren't test weapons. They were world killers, miniaturized, efficient, surgical. A Vael tactician whispered, "Are they simulating total annihilation?" A human officer, standing on the surface beside the observation delegation, answered without turning. "This is our warm-up." No one spoke after that. A squadron of experimental aircraft burst from the storm clouds, diving at impossible angles. The aliens' tracking systems lost lock halfway through their maneuvers. Even the Krith, whose neural processors could model 1,000 trajectories at once, couldn't predict their paths. It wasn't random. It was human chaos, refined into strategy. From orbit, the admirals exchanged nervous glances. "They're not fighting an enemy," one muttered. The Archon of Arms corrected him. "No, they're fighting themselves." Hours passed. The exercise didn't stop for nightfall. Humans didn't stop at all. When fatigue hit, they pushed harder. When exhaustion turned to delirium, they sang. When the machines froze, they fixed them barehanded in the cold. At the 50-hour mark, alien observers began collapsing in their own ships from sheer neural overload. The act of watching human endurance was too much. And still, the humans kept going. When dawn finally broke, the storm lifted to reveal an army standing motionless, their breath misting in the frigid air. Not one of them had fallen out of formation. The lead commander stepped forward, voice calm through the comms. "Training complete. Begin debrief." A moment later, an alarm blared through the alien fleet. A ship had moved, unregistered, massive, rising from beneath the Arctic ice like a beast waking from slumber. The observers panicked, thinking it was an attack. But the humans simply looked up, as if waiting. The structure broke through the surface. A warship, but nothing like the galaxy had ever seen. Dark hull, angular, seamless, radiating heat like a newborn star. No insignia. No markings. Only a single word stenciled across its side. Hyperion. Its engines ignited, splitting clouds in half, the snow vaporizing beneath it. The shockwave rippled through the atmosphere and struck the alien fleet like a god's heartbeat. Every sensor went blind. When vision returned, the ship was gone. Vanished. No hyperspace trail, no trace of energy. Just silence. And yet every human soldier on the ground stood saluting the empty sky. The Archon of Arms, watching from orbit, finally broke the silence. What was that? The human liaison turned to her, eyes cold, unreadable. "That wasn't war," he said. "That was graduation." The aliens realized then, what they'd seen wasn't even humanity's full strength. It was their beginner level. And somewhere deep in the black, where the ship Hyperion had vanished, something ancient stirred awake, answering an unspoken call. When the light vanished and the sensors cleared, the alien admirals shouted conflicting orders. "Track the signature. Scan for gravity wells. Prepare containment interceptors." But the Hyperion left no trace. No ship, no matter how advanced, could simply disappear, unless it wasn't traveling through space as the galaxy knew it. The Archon of Arms stood silent on the bridge of her flagship, hands clasped behind her back. Around her, command screens displayed only static. "Recalibrate the array," she ordered. Her aide hesitated. "Ma'am, the distortion isn't external. It's inside our scanners. Like something is rewriting the feed." A pause. The Archon's eyes narrowed. "Rewriting it with what?" The answer came a moment later, an audio signal, faint, buried deep in the noise. A human voice, calm, measured, amused. "You're not supposed to see this part." Then silence again. The Archon's hearts pounded. She didn't recognize the voice, but the tone, it wasn't a threat. It was a warning. Meanwhile, far beyond mapped space, the Hyperion emerged into a void no star dared to touch. It drifted near a field of shattered moons, their fragments suspended like frozen rain. Inside the ship, human officers moved with precision and purpose. They weren't panicked. They weren't even surprised. This was the real training ground. A chamber the galaxy had forgotten. A region once used by the early Terran fleets before the fall of their first interstellar empire. Here, gravity itself folded inward, an ancient war test bed designed for combat under impossible conditions. The Hyperion's captain, Admiral Callan Drake, stood before the main viewport, his reflection caught in the stars that weren't stars at all. "Run the ghosts," he said. Instantly, 1,000 holographic targets materialized, each a simulation of the galaxy's greatest fleets. Dominion destroyers, Vael dreadnoughts, Krith mineships. The humans didn't flinch. They trained, not against physical enemies, but against predicted wars. They'd cataloged every species battle doctrine, every potential weapon, every formation, and built AI constructs to fight them over and over until perfection was achieved. The bridge vibrated with thunder as railguns fired into nothingness, carving plasma arcs across a dead nebula. Callan's adjutant, Commander Lyra, approached him. "Sir, if the Council learns about this, they already have," he replied. "That's why we're here. To remind them what they're trying to copy." Lyra hesitated. "Then what happens when they come for us?" Callan looked out into the darkness. "They'll come," he said softly. "And when they do, we'll be ready." Back in Council space, the Archon of Arms convened an emergency meeting. The recordings of the training exercise were declared a potential security threat. The mention of Hyperion was scrubbed from official reports. But rumors spread faster than censorship. And in every military across the stars, something began to shift. Commanders pushed harder. Soldiers trained longer. Entire fleets reorganized to mirror human tactics. But none of them understood why it didn't work. Because humans didn't train to win. They trained to never stop. Every failure was fuel. Every loss, another simulation. Every death, another lesson written in the blood of a species that refused extinction. On the third day after Hyperion vanished, strange signals began echoing across subspace. Distorted voices, whispers in human languages no one could translate. Some called it interference. Others, ghosts. But one Dominion scout ship, patrolling near the edge of uncharted space, picked up a transmission so clear it froze every crew member in place. "Hyperion standing by. Next exercise begins now." Then a flare brighter than a sun lit up the void. Thousands of ships, phantoms of metal and light, moved through the nebula like a storm given form. And somewhere deep inside that chaos, the humans smiled. The Council's ships arrived in force. Every major empire sent its elite. Vael dreadnoughts darkened the stars. Krith mineships pulsed with psychic static, and the Dominion's infamous black-armored legions formed a living wall around the void. They'd tracked the ghost signals for 6 days, triangulating bursts of impossible energy to this desolate sector. And there, hanging in the hollow between fractured moons, was the Hyperion. It looked asleep. Its hull drifted, lifeless. No heat signatures. No power. No shields. Just silence. But silence has teeth. The Archon of Arms watched from the bridge of her flagship, tension coiled in every gesture. "Open a channel," she ordered. "Hyperion, this is Archon Velra of the Galactic Council. You are in violation of joint military boundaries. Respond immediately." No answer. "Scan for life signs." The officers hesitated. Then one whispered, "There's thousands. But they're flickering." "Sir, the readings don't make sense. They're everywhere and nowhere." Velra's eyes narrowed. "Deploy boarding teams." Within minutes, strike craft descended upon the Hyperion's hull, cutting through its plating with plasma torches. They breached the corridors, expecting resistance, finding only echoes. The ship was full of shadows. Training pods still ran simulations, looping endlessly. The first team reached the command deck. And there, frozen mid-motion, was Admiral Callan Drake. He wasn't dead. Not exactly. His body was suspended in a temporal stasis field, half a second between thought and movement. His lips were parting, as if about to say something. "Get a recorder on him," the lead operative said. "Let's see what message he left." They activated the system. The field released. And Drake's voice cut through the silence like thunder. "Simulation breach detected. Exercise escalation authorized." The ship woke up. Lights flared red. The hull groaned. Training drones reactivated, targeting anything not tagged as human. Across the void, the alien fleets screamed warnings as the Hyperion systems unfolded into something that wasn't just machinery, it was alive. Massive cannons slid from hidden ports, glowing with the pale light of experimental weaponry. "Evasive maneuvers," Vael shouted. But it was already too late. The Hyperion fired. Not plasma. Not kinetic rounds. Data. Pure, encoded warfare. The blast rippled through the fleet's ships like a psychic scream. Every targeting computer, every navigation core, every artificial mind began replaying fragments of human combat logs. Trillions of simulations of death. Thousands of wars fought and fought again. The aliens began to understand. Hyperion wasn't a warship. It was a memory engine, humanity's entire history of violence compressed into a single living archive. Their sensors melted under the strain. Their minds followed soon after. The Krith telepaths went mad first, clawing at their own heads as echoes of human soldiers whispered through their thoughts. "Keep moving. Pain means you're alive. Get up." Across the fleet, panic turned to silence. And then, just as the Hyperion's weapons reached full charge, it stopped. Every light dimmed. Every gun lowered. The human voice returned, calm, steady, almost compassionate. "End of exercise." The ship powered down. The Council's survivors drifted, stunned and speechless. No one fired. No one ran. They couldn't. The Archon of Arms stared at the frozen image of the Hyperion, her throat dry. Was that real? The human liaison, who had somehow survived the psychic storm aboard her bridge, simply said, "That was a training demonstration." Vael turned slowly, trembling. "A demonstration?" "They erased half a fleet." "Correct," the liaison interrupted. "And they didn't even use real weapons." The Archon stepped forward. "Then why? Why show us this?" The human met her gaze, expression unreadable. "Because the galaxy needs to remember what happens when it forgets what we are." Months passed. The Hyperion vanished once more, leaving behind wreckage and rumor. The Council classified the incident as an AI malfunction. But every admiral who'd seen it, the survivors, knew better. They had looked into the abyss of humanity's endurance and seen no bottom. In the far reaches of space, beyond charted zones, Hyperion drifted again. Inside, Admiral Drake stood at the viewport, watching the slow pulse of distant stars. Commander Lyra joined him quietly. "They'll never come again." Drake nodded. "Good. They weren't ready." She frowned. "And when they are?" He smiled faintly. "Then they won't need to fight us. They'll finally understand why we train the way we do." "Why's that, sir?" Drake turned toward her, eyes tired but burning. "Because somewhere out there, something will always come for us. And when it does," he looked back to the stars, "we'll already be awake." The engines of the Hyperion stirred. Slowly, the great vessel moved forward, its hull reflecting the faint shimmer of unseen worlds. It was not retreat. It was continuation. And somewhere in that eternal silence between galaxies, humanity trained again. Because they never stopped and never would. Because in the end, the galaxy finally learned the truth. Humans didn't need an off switch. They were the switch. And when it flipped, the universe held its breath.